There are tips. The tips are really important, whether this is your style or you're in a relationship with someone with this style, again, personally or professionally. When you come at it from the how do I support them to meet their needs, you are going to get their best self back. Okay, so you are going to work with them in order to keep them from shifting into their self-protective system. And when it comes to the people that are in a relationship with you, if they understand this about you and they understand these tips, they can also come into that relationship in a way that makes sure that your needs are being met. Okay, because when our needs are met, we're happier, we're more satisfied, we're moving into self-actualization, and we're ultimately in our relationships really thriving, and that sets the foundation to allow us to become who we are meant to be. So in terms of tips, be clear, define what you want, okay? Define what you want in the relationship. What are your expectations? What are their expectations? Make sure that there is clear and crystal definition around how you are coming together. If it's in a workplace, how is that going to work? If you're in-laws, sort of what's the expectation on them? What's the expectation on you, right? Bring that level of clarity, because we are going to get the best outcomes in the relationship when we do that. Avoid blindsiding them, okay? Don't put something in front of them that they haven't had time to think about or come to a conclusion, especially if you're doing it in front of other people. Give them time to digest things to get back in control. For some of you who have done the imposter syndrome training with me, and you've heard me tell my story about telling my ex I wanted to go to Hawaii and him saying no, 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 because I blindsided him. There was no lead up to it. There was no kind of planting of seeds. There was nothing. It was just full on. And again, because it makes them feel out of control, they get back in control by saying no or shutting it down or overpowering the other person, okay? If they're coming home from a long day at work where they've been working logically all day, don't expect them to walk in that door and do a deep dive into listening to your emotions, okay? They need time to transition. And also because they're very role driven, you got to give them time to transition from, work hat, change their hat, from, work hat into, spouse hat, right? So give them that time in that space, and don't, especially if you sort of when waiting, and again, this is not gender-based. This is based on personality, that, they need that time to make that transition, right? And allowing them to do that to where they're in control of that transition is you're going to have a better conversation with them. If you, again, kind of blindside or push them right into it, their need to be in control is going to get triggered, and they're more likely to shut it down or not listen, or, sort of give you that sort of, here, just go do this sort of dismissal, okay? If you're having to talk about issues in the relationship, if you're talking about your needs for intimacy, do it logically. Come at it from a fact-based perspective, okay? Trying to come up with, here are the facts, here's the evidence. So less about it from emotional language and more about what's the actual issue and what are some of the options that we have for resolving that issue, okay? Allow them to lead where it's not important to you. This is probably one of the biggest learnings, mistakes that I made in my relationship, not understanding it. I never thought about, because I don't have a need to be in control, but not in this kind of way, but in that way of I'm always working to create something that I see in my mind, and so I do to a degree. And in my first marriage, my approach, even though it seemed really collaborative, at the end of the day, I was the one that was making most of the decisions. And I could see those places where, we hadn't carved off really clear places and spaces for my ex to be in charge and in control, and in charge and in control of the things he wanted to be in charge and in control of. I gave him the things that I didn't want to be in charge and control of, but it wasn't enough to satisfy him. And so having to negotiate that, having to be really clear about that, and trying to forge that if you can, again, role driven, but also that need to be in control at the end of it, okay? And last but not least, this style will lose control emotionally. And when they do lose emotional control, it is usually a way of getting back in control, but you need to give them some space to recover from that, okay? So let them go, let them have that time, because it is very distressing for them when they actually lose emotional control, because they recognize it is, in the moment, it might have gotten them back in control, but it's not actually allowing them to truly get their need for control to be met. And so you just give them some time and some space when they lose that emotional control.